Hello, Vikings. Today we are learning about the Aztec Chinampas. Our objective is I can analyze secondary sources to gain understanding and produce clear writing. So there are two different sources that we will be looking at today. Our first source is this short text right here that is titled Description of the Aztec Chinampa System. Our second source is the rest of the document, and that is titled Diorama and Description of the Aztec Chinampa System. Now, the reason that I need you to know the titles is because you are going to be using the title tomorrow, or in the second part of this lesson, when you quote directly from the text. Remember, we have to cite our evidence, and we cite using the title. So follow along with me as we learn about Aztec Chinampas. Aquaculture. Chinampas were a creative and productive approach to agriculture developed by the Aztec civilization. They consisted of a series of alternating canals and narrow artificial islands. All parts of the Chinampas were used to produce food. The land was used to grow vegetables, trees, chickens. The surface of the water was used to raise ducks and grow floating plants such as lotuses. The middle of the water was used for fish and aquatic plants. The bottom of the water was used for prawns or catfish. The edge between the water and the land was used to grow reeds, taro, typha, chicken feed. The vines above the water were used to grow grapes, strawberries, and other vine fruits while shading the water. Each part of the Chinampas worked with the other. The vines dropped nutrients into the water. The water provided nutrients for reed crops, which in turn fed land-based animals. Aztec Chinampas were fertilized with compost and with mud brought up from the bottom of the lake. The water flowing around the island created a microclimate in which extremes of temperature were mitigated. So I'm sure this is kind of difficult to understand. Take a look at this image. This is a diagram of the Chinampas. So what they would do is, remember, Tenochtitlan was founded on Lake Texcoco. It was essentially a swamp. So what they did, because they did not have land to grow crops or food, is they would dig out these canals so that the mud and the dirt and the soil that was here is now loaded on top of the Chinampas, or the floating islands. And they would do that all over. So they dug out the land, piled it on top of the Chinampas, and then they would grow their crops. Now, they could not just pile up soil and then hope that it wouldn't go back in. You could see that they put posts up, and they also put willow trees. They would use these willow trees for two reasons. The number one reason was the willow trees' roots would grow nice and deep down into the lake bed. And then the leaves and the branches of the willow tree would kind of act like umbrellas. So when the text says they created the water flowing around the island created a microclimate in which extremes of temperature were mitigated, even though Tenochtitlan was in the middle of a desert, you guys know evaporation. Okay, good. So even though the water would evaporate because it was so hot, so warm and so hot, the leaves and the branches of the willow trees would make it so that the water, not all of the water would evaporate, and some of it would go back down through the ecosystem. So what I want you to do right now, friends, is I want you to pause the video, rewatch as necessary, and I want you to underline any evidence in here that can help us answer our claim question. Our claim question is, what was the most important aspect of the Chinampas to Aztec society? So pause the video, underline any evidence that can help us answer that question. Okay, welcome back. Our second document, source B, Diorama and Description of the Aztec Chinampa System. Follow along with me as we continue to read. The Aztecs of Central America started out as a weak nomadic tribe of hunters and gatherers. They were driven out onto the marshy shore of Lake Tenochtitlan, located in the Great Central Valley of what is now the country of Mexico. They were treated poorly by their richer and more powerful neighbors and were not allowed to use any land for agriculture. The Aztecs survived through innovation. Since they had no land to grow crops, they decided to modify their environment and create what we call today chinampas. It must have taken them a long time to figure it out, but they learned how to build rafts of plants that they would float on top of the lake water. Then they dug up soil from the shallow bottom of the lake, piling it on the rafts. Because the soil came from the bottom, it was rich in nutrients. These rafts, called chinampas, had vegetables, flowers, and even trees planted on them. The roots of these plants would grow through the floor of the raft and down into the water. These rafts never sank and were sometimes joined together to form floating islands as much as 200 feet long. Some chinampas even had a hut for a gardener to live on the island and care for the plants. On market days, the gardener could use a pole to move the raft close to a marketplace and sell his goods. So here we have dioramas of what chinampas look like. Here we have men building the chinampas. This man, let me zoom in a little bit for you. This man you see has a shovel because they had to dig out the soil. This one is weaving a mat for the chinampas so that water would be able to flow in, but the soil could not leave. And this man, I think, is flattening the chinampas after they have dug the soil out onto it. Over here, we have an example of the variety that was offered by the chinampas. So obviously, we see the canals and the waterways, but it was not just the food that was grown on these floating islands. They also, like it said, raised ducks or chickens or a bunch of different animals that could live in both the land and the water. Since it was a lake, there were plenty of fish. So we see this man was fishing and there's his bucket of fish there. Yes, we get it? Okay. So what I want you to do, again, I would like you to pause the video, go through these first 3 paragraphs and underline any evidence that can help us answer our essential question: what was the most important aspect of the Chinampas to Aztec society? And our last 3 paragraphs. Follow along with me as we read. Eventually, the Aztecs grew to a strong, intimidating empire. They defeated and conquered the people who had once oppressed them. Although their empire grew far out from the Chinampas that helped them survive, they never abandoned the site on the lake. Their once poor village became a huge, magnificent city. Throughout it all, the Chinampas helped feed the people of the capital city. The sight of these islands surprised the conquering Spaniards. Indeed, the view of an entire grove of trees that looked like it was suspended on the water must have been confusing, even frightening. Chinampas continued to be used on the lake well into the 19th century, though they became less and less common over time. Ancient Aztecs probably never thought they were creating a technology that could be used thousands of years later. Based on what we have learned from them, we have created new modern-day Chinampas. One final time, I want you to pause the video and underline evidence that you can use to support your claim. So now that you have read the documents and you have analyzed 2 of them, we are going to now continue to analyze these sources to gain understanding, and today we will produce clear writing. So I just want to remind you of how we score claims. We score claims on a 1, 2, 3, or 4-point basis. A 1 point means that your claim is unclear. Either it does not answer the question, or it is a fact and it cannot be argued. Remember, your claim is an opinion and it must be argued. Or your claim has no evidence or no reasoning. For 2 points, your claim itself is clear, the first sentence is clear, but you do not provide evidence or reasoning. Or your claim is combined with your reasoning. Or, also to score a 2, your evidence or your reasoning does not actually relate to your claim. 3 points is the first part of passing. 3 and 4 are passing, 1 and 2 is not passing. For 3 points, your claim is clear, you have evidence, and you have reasoning, and both of those relate to your claim. And then a 4 is awesome. Your claim is clear, your evidence and your reasoning actually support your claim and make your claim stronger. So we have some examples. For each of the examples below, you are going to decide with your group the score for each claim, 1, 2, 3, or 4, and you will explain why it deserves that score. Number 1, human sacrifice was important to the Aztec gods. Quote, humans, usually adults, were frequently sacrificed to feed the gods and keep them happy. Close quotes. And then here's my citation, Aztec gods jigsaw activity. The gods needed human lives to stay happy. So looking at this and analyzing, there's 3 sentences. We can tell the first sentence is a claim. The second sentence we know is evidence because it has quotation marks and a citation. And then the third sentence is reasoning. So we know it's either 2, 3, or 4, right? So now we need to look at it. Does the evidence support the claim? Does the reasoning support the claim? Okay. Number 2, the Aztec social hierarchy was important. Quote, humans, usually adults, were frequently sacrificed to feed the gods and keep them happy. Quote, the Inca emperors made sure the Inca people were well fed and happy. The Maya also had a social hierarchy. Well, wait a minute. I have a claim. The Aztec social hierarchy was important. There's evidence there. There's reasoning there, I think. But those 3 things don't have anything to do with each other. So what would you score this? A 1, a 2, or a 3? And then tell me why. Number 3, the Aztecs were people who lived in Mesoamerica. Ooh, we know there's no evidence or reasoning. And is that even a claim? Can you argue that, or is that a fact? Tell me what you would score it, 1, 2, 3, or 4, and why. And then number 4, human sacrifice was an extremely important practice in the Aztec society. Humans, usually adults, were frequently sacrificed to feed the gods and keep them happy. The Aztecs believed that their gods needed to feed on human hearts to stay alive. They believed that if the gods were to die, so would the entire Aztec civilization. This shows the importance to human sacrifice. What would you score this? 1, 2, 3, or 4, and why? Once you and your group have decided on that, then you are going to do your CER, which you are totally used to doing. If you have the paper copy, then your claim is on the front and your evidence and reasoning is on the back. You need to provide 2 pieces of evidence and 2 pieces of reasoning. Just like in the examples, your evidence needs to be directly quoted from the text. You are not changing a single word. You are also providing your citation information, explaining to me where you got this information. Remember, you are responsible middle school students. You are not saying source A or source B. You are telling me the title of the document from where you found that information. So you start with your claim, then you provide your evidence, and then you provide your reasoning. Again, just like the examples, you can use multiple sentences of explanation, of reasoning. In fact, the stronger your reasoning, the more you support your claim, the higher your score will probably be. Do you see how that works? Yes? Okay, good. Just making sure we're on the same page. If you are struggling, here are some sentence stems that can help you with your reasoning. Okay? If you need help, please do not hesitate to reach out. Your teachers are here to help you. We like to help you. Please let us help you. Be good people, make good choices. Go Vikings.